welcome back to my channel, and today I've got another roundup of, it's not 5, it's 6 children's books that I've read in the last couple months. I have already written reviews for these books, so I'll post a link to my blog down in the box below. I've been on this children's book binge now for quite a while. I've been really enjoying it and reading quite a wide range of different kinds of children's books, and it's amazing what children's writers are writing about at the moment. Like, I have read some such profound and moving stories that I don't think would work in adult format. It's amazing. I think this time I had quite a good run in. I think I enjoyed all of these books. Yeah. So the first one is The Ones That Disappeared by Zana Fraillon. She's also the author of The Bone Sparrow, which was one of my favourite books a couple of years ago, and I think it was an astounding book, and I didn't believe she could do it again, but this book was phenomenal, and I think even better than The Bone Sparrow. This book centres around 3 children, Moran, Isa and Ezra, I think. They have all been taken from the beaches after boats capsized, refugee camps or children's homes, and these are the kids that disappeared. So you might have heard the newspapers and media say that children have been disappearing from refugee camps. This is their story, and it's heavily based in real children's lives, and the author goes into quite a bit of detail in the back of the book about the research she did for this book and the real children she met and talked to. It's quite a heavy book. These children, they're taken by a gang called the Snakeheads, and they are kept locked up in a basement where they feed the plants. And then one day and there's an accident and a fire, and they get the chance to escape, but only Ezra and Isa make it out. Moran is caught by the police, and Ezra and Isa just have to flee and leave him, and they disappear into the wild. I think this book is set mostly in Australia, and they meet a boy called Skeet who's neglected by his alcoholic mother. So you've got even more kind of additional complex themes there with family and abuse and neglect, and together these 3 children, they create a man from mud. And this reminded me a bit of Skellig, but it's so much deeper than that, because I think for me the river man, I think they end up calling him, kind of represented their lack of a voice in the world and the lack of justice they would have, and their desperate need for safety. And he leads them into the underground drain system in search of Moran and freedom, and he provides a pathway to hope, but not by being like a whimsical magical guide or anything like that. He's silent and ugly, and he is everything they want to bury and hide away in the drains. There's so many layers of metaphor, and it's an incredible book to unpack, I think. And I don't think this would be a book that would appeal to all children. It's definitely one that would be good for a classroom and guided reading, because I think a lot of the themes in this will need unpacking, perhaps by an adult. There's quite a lot of sensitive scenes that are quite upsetting. Even me as a 25-year-old, I found some of the scenes in this book quite difficult to read. But it's such an important book, and it's so perfectly written. Like, I wouldn't change a thing. And one of the things that I think Fraillon does so well with these books, both The Bone Sparrow and The Ones That Disappeared, is that everything is geared towards hope. It's uplifting in this strange, mesmerising way, because it's also hopeful. The kids, the way they deal with their trauma and the way they support each other, their friendships, found family is such an important theme in this book, and that is amazing. Like, I can't recommend this book enough. It is so good, and I think it's I haven't seen much talk about it. I haven't really seen it in bookshops, and I think it's definitely an undervalued book that needs to be read by more people, and this is definitely a book adults need to read as well. So that one, 5 out of 5 stars for sure. The next book that I want to talk about is Wolfe Investigates by Lauren St. John, and this is a new mystery series by this author, and I'd not read anything of hers before, and I've seen her books around for quite a long time. We have quite several of them in the school library where I work, and I'm just astounded that I have never read any of her books before because they are so up my street. They are so good, and the characters are amazing. There's so much detail about animals, and they're just such great fun books. And this one is about a little girl called Kat, who she lives with her mum in London, and her mum is a vet, but quite dissatisfied with the people she's working with, and one day their house in London gets broken into by a teenage burglar, and her mum decides that is it, she's had enough, and she moves them to a small seaside town in Dorset. And Kat is ecstatic. It's really nice to read a book actually about a kid who is so excited to move rather than like traumatized by it. And she instantly dives into the community. She starts up a pet sitting agency and makes friends with several of the locals, while her mum deals with all sorts of animal catastrophes. And the mystery begins when one of Kat's newfound friends and pet sitting clients mysteriously disappears. And his house is kind of like booby-trapped with all sorts of weird gadgetry and lots of suspicious things. She also makes a friend, and their dynamic is amazing, and it's just so much fun. It's such a great adventure story, proper traditional mystery, but it's got so much modern twists and things like that. This really showcases how technology can actually assist kids to engage with nature and animals, and it doesn't have to be a barrier. I think that's such an annoying adult trope, that adults always write that kids can't engage with nature because of their technology. I think that kids engage more because of technology with nature. They have ways to use it, and this really showcases that, and it's a really great read. And I gave this one 4.5 out of 5 stars. I think the only thing that let this down for me was that I wanted to know more. There was a little bit at the end I was like so curious about, but I think I'll have to wait until book 2 to find out. But it was still a fantastic read. The next one is The Boy Who Grew Dragons by Shephard, and this one is quite a slim little book, and it's for an age range that is a little bit younger than I usually read, but I'd heard a lot of good things about this book on Twitter, and it just sounded so cute and fun. So this book's about a little boy called Thomas, who one day while helping his granddad out in his garden discovers that a strange tree in the garden is actually a dragon fruit tree, and not the usual dragon fruits you buy in the supermarket. These dragon fruits hatch baby dragons, and baby dragons come with their whole host of issues. They have spontaneously combusting poo, which is really hilarious, I must say, and they get into all sorts of trouble, and it was just a really fun book. There was some fantastic scenes of dragon chaos and children in like libraries and school bullies, and Thomas trying to hide dragon from his family and his friends, and a camping trip that goes disastrously wrong. And it was a great fun book, and there's another one coming out very soon which I'm looking forward to. And I think I gave this one 4 out of 5 stars because it was so much fun, and I can imagine reading this book aloud would be fantastic. So I think this one's probably good to be targeted anywhere between like year 2 and year 4. It's like really fun. The next book that I've got is Mirror Magic by Claire Fayers, and I read this one in a buddy read with Charlie at Charles Heathcote. He'd been asking me for a while about children's book recommendations, and he knows like I read a lot of children's books. I've always been interested in children's books, and they were kind of like my thing at uni. I did writing for young people, so I've always just been surrounded by children's bookness. And he was having a bit of a downtime, so I suggested that we read some children's books together, and this was one that Charlie picked from like the big list that I sent him, and I didn't really know much about it except it was kind of like magical. And this is about a little girl who, after the death of her parents, moves with her brother back to a town where she was born, and this town is on the Welsh-English border, and it's called Wise. And it's famous for its magical mirrors and its, what are they called? Enchanters. But it's all a bit fake and all a bit tacky. And so she's not very impressed when she gets there. And she just feels a bit miserable. So she starts working for her aunt, and one day she comes across one of these mirrors which is supposed to be long dead. And she sees an elf boy in the mirror. Starts them on a big adventure, and it's all magical in different worlds and bad guys and all sorts of fun, and it was a lot of fun. I wouldn't say it's the best written book. I only gave this one 3.5 stars, and I think it was because the big plot twist, of the whole book, I guessed from about chapter 4, which I think is a bit too early to guess the main twist of the book. So I found it quite predictable, and some of the characters didn't have much depth, but I really enjoyed it anyway. It's a very fun book. It's some of the dialogue's really great, the magic's quite fun, and it's a little bit different. So I gave this one 3.5 stars, but I still very much enjoyed it. The next one is my favourite. Yes. The next one is The Storekeepers Island by Doyle, and this book is this month's primary school book club pick on Twitter. So if you want to have a chat with the author at the end of the month, go check that out on Twitter. I read this book last month, I think, and this was my second buddy read with Charlie at Charles Heathcote. We both really, really enjoyed this book. I think we both realised we'd absolutely love it from the first chapter. It's about a little boy called Finn Boyle and his annoying sister Tara, and they've been sent to live with their grandfather on Arranmore Island, which is a real island just off the coast of Ireland, but I'm not sure it's got all this magical stuff going on, but it's wonderful to have that kind of concrete place, and the sense of place in this book is really great. You could really feel the moods of the storms and the sea and the island and its community. His grandfather's house is full of candles and he's not quite sure why. His sister's been keeping secrets from him and it's being really infuriating, and it just emphasised so much with Finn, who's a wonderful character. And the magic, it's a kind of memory magic, and I don't want to say much about it because I think the less you know about this book going into it, the more you'll enjoy it, because it's just so surprising and wonderful and just completely enchanting. It's confidently written, it's fresh, it's engaging, the characters have such great dynamics, and the dialogue is intensely, amazingly written. I could literally imagine these kids having these conversations. It felt so real. And Finn's moods and Tara's moods and just kids being kids, and I loved Finn's grandfather as well, Maliki, and the layers of history, and it's a beautifully charming and very mesmerisingly compelling book, and it's a fantastic start to a new series that I cannot absolutely wait for. The magic system it's not something I've seen quite like this before. It's very if you've seen Song of the Sea, it reminds me of bits of that. It's got this wonderful old ancient magicalness to it. Talking about a magic system, of course it's magical. I'm just gonna ramble about this book, but I gave this full 5 out of 5 stars, and it's probably one of my favourite books of the year. And I think Charlie loved it probably as much as I did. It's one of the best written children's books that I've read in a long time, and I'm so excited to see what else Doyle does next. The last book that I want to talk about isn't a book I actually have a copy of. I was sent it for review by NetGalley, and this is a very special book because it's a book by a friend of mine from university, and it's called The 11th Trade by Alyssa Hollingsworth. And I've been hearing about this book for so long that it feels so wonderful to see Alyssa going on this journey and it being published, and I can buy this book. I can actually buy it in September for all the kids I know and for my school, and have it in my school library and on my shelf, and that is so wonderfully exciting because it's not only my friend's book, but it is also a very, very excellent book. So I'm maybe a little bit biased. The 11th Trade is about a little boy called Sammy who moves with his grandfather to Boston from Afghanistan, and his grandfather brings with him a very precious instrument called a rhubarb, and one day while they are busking, the rhubarb is stolen from Sammy, and he's devastated. He completely blames himself for the loss of this instrument, and it means so much to both of them. It's quite an emotional start because you know this instrument means so much, but you don't quite know why yet. And as the story progresses, Sammy begins a new school, he makes new friends, and one of his friends finds the rhubarb for sale on a pawn shop's website. And when he goes, he finds out it's $700 and he has no money at all. So he begins this big thing to trade as much as he can to make the money. And along the way he makes so many friends and he learns so much about himself. Again, this is a very confidently written book. Every sentence has had so much attention put to it. It's so confident and so emotional, and oh man, I cried on the train and I had to tell a lady that this book wasn't out until September, and she was so disappointed she couldn't read it because she thought it must be great if I was crying on a train, because she watches me like every day reading books and I hardly ever cry. But this book is so moving, and it's got a very raw, it's got a very personal history as well for Alyssa herself, which she goes into quite a bit of detail in the author's note. Perfectly balances plot driven and character driven. Sammy's such a wonderful emotive character, and you're fully with him along his whole journey and how he processes his trauma and has to deal with what he's so young. And I love the twists at the end and all the new characters that he meets along the way, and how this community wraps around him and his grandfather, and it was just so heartwarming. Alyssa made this completely accessible to anyone. It's such a wonderful book and I really recommend it to everyone. Yeah. And so those were not 5, 6 books that I've read recently. I enjoyed all of them and I really recommend them to everyone. If you've read any of them, please let me know your thoughts down below. I'd really like to hear them. And that is all for now. So see you soon.